Before we get started, I'd like to ask you all a question. It's a question many of you will think is pretty pointless, that it's very obvious, and that I'm just trying to seem facetious. First up, I use the word facetious. I am clearly very facetious. But no, it's a question that I think you all should ask yourselves, because it's a question I've been asking myself for the better part of almost 3 years now, and maybe longer in some ways. And that question is, what is Fruits Basket about? Many of you may be going to the obvious answers, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. Because when I finally realized the answer to what is Fruits Basket actually about, it came after watching 3 seasons and seeing the anime around Fruits Basket. So, let us just get right into with the beginning. What is the plot of Fruits Basket? So, you've got this girl named Toru Honda. She is a all-time best girl. If you don't think that, fuck you, fight me. And Toru has it pretty fucking bad, actually. She recently lost her mother. Her father passed away when she was very young, and because her primary caregiver, her grandfather, is too old to take care of her, he is now living with relatives who don't have room for Toru, so what is she doing? She is living in a tent on a hill. Yeah, so this character has it very bad. So what? She's going to be cynical, she's going to be negative? Not quite. Toru is the most positive, energetic, happy, bubbly person on the planet. She 100% will always believe in the good in people and will always believe that it will all work out. And this is interestingly contrasted to when she meets the owners of the land she is camping out on, 2 members of the Soma family, Yuki and Shirogame. It's one of those names where I feel like everyone says it differently. God damn it, Japanese people. Anywho, so yeah, she finds out that these 2 are living on the property she's on, and also because her tent gets swept away, they make a deal that she can live in their house if she, because she has a part-time job as a cleaning lady, does all the chores and cooking and stuff, which she is fine with. I mean, look at the size of this house they're in, and look at the fucking men she's surrounded by. Can you fucking blame her for being okay with this? But, right when she's moving in, she encounters another unbelievably handsome young man, Kyo, who through a mishap ends up, falling on him, and is revealed that when touched by members of the opposite sex, 12 members of the Soma family will turn into the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac, and Kyo will turn into the cat. That's right, no fucking sex going on around here, people. This is the ultimate form of abstinence. Unless you're into that shit, in which case, good for you. But yeah, so anyways, so from there, what happens? Are we going to explore why this happens? Is there going to be lots of magic, adventure, fantasy action? No, not even remotely. You see, from this point forward, she just lives in the house and just keeps the secret. That's it. There's not a lot of plot to this show. Really, at its core, this is just kind of a slice of life. You go through their everyday lives and adventures and just kind of normal people stuff. You obviously meet the other members of the Soma family who turn into animals, and you see what they're about and what's going on with them. But for the most part, this is a fairly easy to digest show where you just kind of go through everyone's day-to-day lives. So why is this so special then? Well, you see, it kind of starts to become apparent after a while that everyone in this show is going through some sort of trauma and tragedy. Just because Toru chooses to be happy and still remain positive despite everything she's gone through doesn't mean that there isn't a lot going on within her. And through watching everything she goes through in this show, you see her learn to deal with that and kind of process it and move forward in life. And it's not an overnight thing. It takes 3 seasons for you to really feel like she's at a point where she can move forward with her life. And that's the same thing for everyone else. Yeah, the curse might not play a huge role in the plot, but you feel like it plays a huge role in everyone's lives. Everyone in this show's lives have been basically just turned upside down and kind of destroyed because this is a part of it. It's not something that affects every aspect of it, but it's something that affects enough of it that it makes it very hard for them. Every character processes all of this differently and deals with it in different ways. Some go about it in all right ways and are still fairly functional, others not so much. And that's really where the show gets kind of interesting. Now, obviously, if you watch for more than 5 minutes, you can figure out the curse is a metaphor for any number of things. But above all else, what it ultimately always goes back to is that idea of trauma and pain and how you move forward in it. And what I think kind of separates this show and makes it a bit better than, say, a ReZero or a Wonder Egg Priority is that it's not afraid to just be that. There are entire episodes of this show where we spend the 22-minute time period just inside someone's head watching them work through what the current events of their lives have done to them, as they kind of see new aspects to the world and maybe don't necessarily think of things the way they did. The show is also not afraid to show people in lights that they're not always comfortable being shown in. All the men in this show will at times be seen as vulnerable, flawed, scared. They can't always hide behind an overly masculine shield. And remember, when this was written, it was still very common in most media for men to be represented as big, burlapsy men. This manga had a huge influence in Japan and how men could be written and shown in different forms of media. That might sound crazy, but there's a reason that after running for like 8 years and having a very successful anime, they felt the need to remake this and make this more accurate to the source material. Something about this resonated with people, and it really resonated with me. Toru's not just so perfect all the time. She's not just getting over trauma. You learn to see that no, being so selfless and always wanting to just make everyone else happy, it's not necessarily always right, and it doesn't necessarily always mean things will turn out okay. This show is not afraid to be complicated and complex. It's not afraid to present one of the most terrifying antagonists I've ever seen in an anime in the form of Akido. A character who, while has some kind of very little explained ability that doesn't really play into anything, basically what I'm trying to get at is that this character is insanely terrifying without needing any sort of thing that normally makes a character terrifying. Just the ability to manipulate people's emotions and to control them is horrifying enough and feels very close to the real world. So because of this, when everyone moves forward and tries to rebuild their lives and become being better people, it feels genuine. I genuinely cared about what happened to everybody when the show was over. And that's very rare in a world where we have so much fucking anime coming out at all times. The last big positive I want to talk about that I think really makes this show stand out is its OST. This show has a beautiful soundtrack. Every song has this feeling of warmth. It has this feeling of compassion. Every track feels like it puts you into a person's mental state and what they're going through and how they hope to move past it. You get just a sense of personality and story just from listening to it. It's one of my favorite anime OSTs of all time, and when I've been going through stuff myself, I feel the desire to put it into the background and start thinking about things. Now, are there definitely things wrong with this show? Of course there frickin' is. The plot is very light, and at times this can be problematic, especially towards the end when I felt there was a little bit of, haha, you thought that this was all random, but no, it was building to something. No, it wasn't. Also, because there are so many characters, it does become hard to find time to fit everyone in. Like I said, I definitely cared about everyone enough to be happy when you see how they end up, but at the same time, a lot of them really are just kind of crawling over top of each other, trying to find screen time. The last thing that I consider to be a bit of a negative, but might not, depending on how you sort of looked at things, is the main love triangle between Toru, Kyo, and Yuki. I personally kind of fell a little flat. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy with how things turned out. I was very happy, and all these characters have fantastic chemistry. But when all was said and done, I kind of felt like because they wanted you to believe the love triangle, it sort of resulted in a situation where I felt like scenes that should have been with who she should have ended up with wound up going to another character and vice versa. And I kind of just feel like it sort of makes it feel a tad uneven, but again, you believe there's so much just love and caring and compassion between these characters by the end of it. I really did go with it. I just kind of felt like you could have done and should have done maybe a little bit more. And I do know that many of the later chapters of the manga that do a bit more with other characters was cut from this. At first, that sounded like a Herculean task to find out things about them, and I was kind of glad they cut them, but now I'm kind of like, I kind of want to know. It's been a couple days since I watched the finale, and the more I think about it, the more I would like to learn more about these characters and this world and this story. Will I go dive in head first? No, but I am kind of happy they left a few tidbits for you to learn on your own for those of you who were able to get into this. And I hope if you give this show a try, you do get into this. This is the kind of anime I personally want. We get enough big shonen epics every season. We get enough of isekais. We get enough of this. We get enough of that. I don't think we're getting enough shows that are willing to just talk about emotion. And when we do, they feel such a strong desire to just fill it with so many other things because they're afraid that you can't handle it and that they need to, like, pad it out. But Fruits Basket never thought that. And I always believed this was a show that genuinely wanted to talk about something. And I'm glad I watched it, and I hope you watch it too. So to close out this video, I must once again ask the question from the beginning. What is Fruits Basket about? If you still have the same answer you had at the beginning, that's fine. But if you maybe feel like your answer is changing, and you think it's time to check this show out so you can see how, I really recommend it. I think you're in store for something very special. But yeah, in the comment section below, give me your thoughts about Fruits Basket, what you liked, what you didn't like. There are definitely several more negatives I could have, like, really harped on, but I chose not to. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me next time as we try and maybe think a little bit more about anime than, say, the average person who won't seek out some idiot who talks about it on YouTube.